Okay, so this article we've got here is from the Breakthrough Institute, and uh, the basics of it is as Trump's new policies mix with, and in some cases supplant Biden era policies, the next 4 years are uncertain, but it's hard to say what the trend in near term US emissions are going to be. And so I've got this chart from Gabe that has the observed and modeled economy wide greenhouse gas emissions with and without the IRA. So the question here is the IRA going to get repealed? And if so, what is the difference there? We see a historic emissions trend where we're only down about 2,000 millions of metric tons of CO2 from today, as opposed to the Biden 2030 plan, which takes us down sharply much earlier, about 5 years earlier than is projected there. The US withdrawal from the Paris International Climate Agreement and possibly the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change won't really have an impact on global progress because other countries fear unnecessary condemnation if we act and they follow on. This tweet from Dr. Jesse Jenkins shed some light on it. The environmental impact of fossil energy developments won't be negligible, and neither are they catastrophic. For example, the Biden EPA itself estimated that its proposed stronger regulations for U.S. coal and gas-fired power plants would only reduce emissions by an added 36 million tons of CO2 per year by 2035. Contrasting that, the federal government's approach to public energy sector innovation over the next few years will be critical. The author of this Breakthrough Institute article speaks about the problems with the Trump tariffs. The United States already faces a double import dependence. Firstly, Chinese transformers and grid equipment, and second, on the electrical steel needed to try and manufacture more transformers domestically. There's going to be long lead times to establish an upstream industrial capacity, and that will weaken the investment case for downstream domestic manufacturing projects. Energy policy observers have begun theorizing that revisions to the IRA will seek a faster phase-out for tax credits for wind and solar and an elimination of the electric vehicle purchase tax credits, but preserve other incentives for advanced manufacturing and clean fuels. Indiscriminate cuts to agencies like Energy, Interior, FERC, USGS, NOAA, and the NRC may inhibit their ability to support national infrastructure efforts and stall important strategic efforts like critical mineral mapping, long-term energy system planning, and nuclear technology development. And I'm going to butt in here because we've seen in the Thorium Energy Alliance community the effect of defunding USGS once already, losing the U.S. expertise in minerals and giving up the public information bank of guidance on where to find minerals, how to extract them, where critical minerals are, and what their importance are in the U.S. means that we have given up the extraction capacity that we need to have homegrown industries that are all fully self-bootstrapped. And so I think they're right on track here with this problem of developing our total national infrastructure. So this is Gabe's synopsis finishing here. A robust political coalition must re-emphasize to Congress and the new administration that America ultimately needs more than just well pads and drilling platforms to guarantee a bright national future. So, any comments on that from anyone?
I can't say I'm in disagreement with it. This administration really cannot afford to take a sledgehammer to everything, with the possible exception of the NRC.
We're going to deregulate. We're going to build fast. Is that the plan? Will that solve all of our problems?
For instance, like I said, the NRC gets in the way more than it helps. Its job is not to enable. Its
Right.
job is to hamstring. And it's been doing that since 1974. Now other agencies, USGS, I don't really see them touching because let's face it, Elon's dependent on USGS.
U.S. Geological Survey, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they're the ones who found that huge lithium deposit, remember?
So if we're going to have magnets of industry like Elon building a new, brighter America without as much regulation, how do we know that the nuclear industry is going to be able to rely on the products that they're building?
Yeah.
I can't talk too much about it, but I know that regulation is only a small part of the problem of building a new reactor. It is not insignificant, but the idea that we can magically snap our fingers and have domestic supply for everything we need, that's a risky bet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of many different groups, NGOs included, have been worried about the time it takes to just get approval to move forward. That can be half the total time of building in some situations. Maybe in nuclear, it might be a third of the time of building. But I think we're going to see 2 to 5 years for environmental review drop down to 2 years, or in some cases where there's an existing environmental review that was recently done, say in the past decade, maybe they'll just take 6 months to update it. They'll contact all the previous people that were talking, that were directly involved with the previous study, and say, has anything changed? Boom, 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 done. Stamp of approval or disapproval, or perhaps a caveat about go ahead, but don't do this one thing. I think the environmental review is going to come down very quickly, though, in the time frame that it takes to. And many people have been saying that. I mean, how long does it take to get the wind and solar people have been pushing for H I always get these letters wrong. HDVC or HVDC. Excuse me.
HVDC.
The long distance, high high voltage direct current, long lines. Those can take a decade just for approval easily, and that's going to come down to 2 years or less, and all that time costs money. So that means new projects will cost less, not because the materials being used are necessarily cheaper. But I think that we're going to see things move forward in some ways that the environmental groups have wanted, but they didn't want it done in this way. They want it done our way only.
Right.
And yes, there will be things that people don't like. There may be increased drilling, but let's be honest, the U.S. is at a current high under the Biden administration for oil and natural gas production and exports. We're at a high right now under a Democratic administration. Now, the groundwork for that goes back 6 years, 10 years, possibly 20 years, as long as these projects take to be brought forward. but they weren't. They either started or they weren't derailed during the Obama administration. Uh, and for the most part, same thing with Biden.
Yeah.
Biden made some changes, but he didn't totally derail them. He didn't cut our oil or gas production in half. We're at
Yeah.
highs right now. And so I don't see that this is going to make a huge difference bringing Trump in. It's like, well, we were number one in the world when he came before he came to office, and we might be number one in the world when he leaves office in 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Will he take credit for that? Of course he will. He'll say things were nowhere before he came to office. That's just his style. But yeah, they are going to go up, and the fact that Chris Wright is going to be in Department of Energy, I think that's only a slight plus for the gas and oil industry because one, they're already doing pretty well, and two, he sees those as stepping stones to a better life for people. If no one's aware, he did put out many months ago, and I don't know if he was aware that he was on a short list at that time, but he put out a thing saying uh, it had humanist in the title, but basically he's looking for things to get people out of poverty. He wants people to be better educated in general. He wants people to not have to worry about, do I have to work part-time when I'm 70 years old to be able to get by? He wants people to be able to retire when they're 70 or 65, or if they have a successful career, they could retire at 45 and still be living middle class or upper middle class lifestyle. So I figure middle class to me is like being able to take a vacation by car. It's maybe in a neighboring state for a week. Upper middle class is you might take 2 or 3 vacations a year, and at least one of those you travel by airplane to get there. So that's how I kind of judge those things. And upper middle class, you're going to have a maybe a second home, a cabin on the lake, something like that. But that he's pro people. He wants people to be secure in their homes and to have homes that they enjoy living in. And he sees oil and gas as a stepping stone to achieve that. A lot of us may disagree with that and say, "Oh, that's a stepping stone to destroying our grandchildren's futures." Um, okay, walk us through that. Um, I only tiny bit see that as true. Has the ring of truth, but it's not the whole truth. Uh, Anyone else wants to jump in? That
Well,
was a good time.
well, I want to ask. I want to sort of interrogate. What happens to the unwinding of regulation when we also factor in a a left leaning backlash? So if if we hear on the right, we hear about lawfare as this illegitimate exercise of strength, but really that represents local control, local property rights, local rights to planning. And if these rights get exercised, what is that going to mean for these development plans? Is it going to slow down the designs of a fantastically productive Trump administration if lawsuits are blanketed over the countryside?
Well, fantastically productive seems like an oxymoron with the Trump administration based on his first term. I'm sorry. I can freely admit that. I always felt like when people hire, they should go through a process, and you should plan to hire once for a position, not 7 or 8 times with a revolving door until you happen to come across a decent person worth keeping, which is what Trump did in the first administration. It's also kind of the way he was leaning with his TV show, The Apprentice. Just throw a bunch of people in there. Someone will get it figured out. So anyway, that aside, we have I think the liberals will be pleasantly surprised at a few things. They won't want to toss the baby out with the bathwater necessarily. Most of them. A few of them want to do that regardless. I think JFK Jr. is one of those types. As well as maybe Bill McKibben. He'll want to pick up the baby with the bathwater, and then it's like, well, maybe only half the bathwater and we'll probably keep the baby. Is kind of how I see him. But he's no one wants to give credit when the other side does something that works. I think that's a job we here might be able to do that in part. If something works, and even if it was a complete accident in our estimation, point out, hey, this is working. And we need to keep this or only modify it slightly in the future. But that's I don't follow politics. I only follow politics because I kind of am forced to follow it. So I don't know how deeply I can go into this without saying something really stupid.
It's all right. We'll hold back. We'll help you out.
Yeah.
What you got, Gabe? Anything? Any just
Well, I'm concerned about what they said about the China's that they're dependent on China for electricity, for parts and stuff like that. I mean, we're dependent on China for a hell of a lot of stuff, and it's like I don't know, man. This whole tariffs thing and trade war and everything. It's a war that I think even the Biden administration went too far with. I mean, it's a war. If you take that on, you're going to lose, because I think we need the Chinese more than they need us. You know, and as far as the nuclear goes, uh, I think we can't forget the fact that Trump was he's like so in the pocket of the fossil fuel industry. Like what do you say? Wanted $1 billion a donation, he'll do anything they'll say. So I don't really see him, other than the NRC, deregulating it. I don't see him being too friendly. I don't see the Republicans being willing to invest the kind of money in research and development that needs to be done. And I could even see
Fair
the
point.
the NRC being defunded, which would make it harder to find. It'd be easier regulation wise to, let's say, for Ed File to get his thing and done, and you got your employer to do the same. But it'll be much more expensive, prohibitively expensive, and the Fed is not going to lend a helping hand, not very
Right,
much.
but the NRC is already primarily funded through the fees it charges. I'm not sure what the current fees are, if it's $260 an hour or $300 an hour. It's been in that range though for over a decade. So they get the minority. I think it's like 15 or 18% of their income directly from the federal government. So defunding the NRC isn't going to be that big of a deal, but also Department of Energy nominee Chris Wright is an investor in nuclear. He's been pro-nuclear for a while. He's signed on as there's a group of oil executives who have signed a pro-nuclear statement saying, we're not worried about nuclear. In fact, we're pro-nuclear. Bring on the nuclear, because they don't see that as a direct threat to oil and gas. So he's going to be pro-nuclear, and he's going to have Trump's ear to some extent at least. So although RFK is fervently anti-nuclear, but that's not RFK is going to be Health and Human Services, possibly, not Department of Energy. So would Trump listen to him more? And Chris Wright, I don't know, but it's more in Chris Wright's purview if he gets confirmed into the Department of Energy. And so Trump might let him have his say, and he may step back and say, do what you need to with it, in which case the NRC could see more funding under Chris Wright. And I think he sees the problems with regulations, being a CEO, and the oil and gas industry is also pretty heavily regulated. So he's going to look at them, and I think he'll see LNT. I suspect he'll see LNT as a major problem,
Yeah.
and he may push to have that reassessed and either downgraded or just eliminated from the way it's intertwined into so many rules right now. So that if that happens, we're going to see a golden age for the NRC.
Mhm.
But again, those are a lot of ifs. There's a lot of moving parts. But I think Chris Wright will be good for nuclear. I think it's a good sign in general because the stocks for the handful of companies that are on the stock market that have to do with nuclear, they shot up, not just after
Mm.
Trump, but after Chris Wright was announced as a nominee. I think they bumped up a little bit further. So it's not that that's the perfect way to gauge things, but it is an initial barometer of how things are seen.
Yeah, I certainly hope that we see a golden age of the NRC. We've already seen some positive action from the Biden administration, regulatory reform. We saw a change in how, for instance, the new scale permitting cost $1 billion and was extremely drawn out, extremely expensive and burdensome regulation. And Biden took action on that. Now, how do you outperform the Biden administration without eroding confidence in the industry or leave room for doubt? And that's sort of like, we're never going to silence all doubts, but we have someone like Chris Wright, and I think that maybe we have a chance to keep it under control. So,
Which aspect under control?
to keep the idea of there being doubts that it will be totally unregulated, because if you think about it, someone in the industry, and we had this problem with the NRC for decades, of it is a self-funding interest. It is like, if Hanford in Washington were cleaned up yesterday, a lot of people would be out of jobs. And there's this criticism of, for instance, Hanford, that it is stretched out in order to, let's see, serve the deep state, you might say. And I guess there is this activist side, this populist side of the incoming administration that would say, we don't need any regulation. But then Chris Wright hopefully has a balance. He sees the value in it being like on the board of Oklo. He would see the value in protecting the confidence in the product, that it's a safe product, that everyone's going to be able to have one of these in their neighborhood without catastrophe happening, and will be able to extract oil and gas without polluting schools and killing children. And we need that confidence that this is a safe industry. And if we let sort of the panicked progressive side take over, and if there's even no changes and they have the symbolic rally against Trump tearing down regulations and spoiling the planet with all of these pollutants, but nothing actually happens, I would love to say that will backfire if there's no substantial change and we see an activist response, a symbolic virtue signaling response to the Trump administration. That would be both a bullet in the foot of the left and a big pain to the industry, because we're complying with all the same regulations we always have in the last 5 years, and we're punished for it.
Yeah.
I
guess I would say, oh, go ahead, William, please.
The simple crux of the matter is that, without going into some, in depth into some of it, and I know if Alfred was here, he'd take great umbrage at this, but Musk and Ramaswamy have a point in that so much of the regulation is preemptively penalizing. Okay. For instance, Gwynne Shotwell of SpaceX basically laid it out in a recent interview where she basically said, much in quite kind of parroting what Musk said, it takes them longer to fill out the paperwork for a launch than it does for them to build a booster or a ship. It's literally an example of the precautionary principle being taken far too far, to the extent where they have to prove that nothing bad is going to happen before they do anything. And on top of that, we have a litany of agencies covering very similar areas of responsibility, but working at cross purposes. The NRC is just one of those. The NRC is pretty much in direct opposition to DOE when it comes to nuclear.
Sometimes.
Yeah. I do like to
there's a lot of
reinforce
employees.
that. But yeah, it is, for instance, if the FAA were run with the same mission as the NRC, the FAA would not be involved in promoting American aircraft manufacturing abroad. It would not be involved in an industry panel on improving the performance of American aircraft. It would be only about safety. And so, at point taken, the NRC is historically a hostile regulator. And the question is, are we going to be able to reform it into a productive, proactive partner in producing energy?
Yeah, the FAA operates similarly as both regulator and promoter in much the same way the AEC used to for nuclear.
Right.
And it was found that politicians of the day didn't like that because the AEC was too promotive, apparently. But we see what has happened in the decades since. Everything basically fell off a cliff with regards to nuclear development in the United States within 2 years of the NRC taking over from the AEC. If we did the same thing with the FAA today, the entire civil aviation industry would probably collapse.
Yeah. I'm reminded just a few months ago, there was an environmental impact statement. NRC was involved with one of our nuclear plants. I forget which one. Sorry, I just can't remember which one. It was not the new Vogel in Georgia, but it was. But they looked at it, and as part of that, they looked at other energy sources to serve that region. They said solar wouldn't be good. Offshore solar wouldn't be good for both tourism and for fishing and other reasons. And they basically eliminated almost every other major energy source in that impact statement. I don't know if that was a one-time deal or that they kind of tried it out, or if that's something they'll continue to do it. But their public statement on the impact of, I think it was adding an additional reactor at a current site. But I wish I could remember which one it was. I posted about it online, but that's been several weeks. I can't remember now. But yeah, that they actually looked and they went through wind, solar, hydro, natural gas, coal. How will these impact the surrounding counties as well as the actual site going forward in the coming decade or two? And nuclear came out the best by far the way they wrote it up. So I'm hoping they continue along those lines, and possibly under Chris Wright, if he gets nominated successfully, then he will encourage them to continue doing that. Don't just say nuclear only, but look at the broader context of safety for the wider community, the regional area around it, and say, yeah, nuclear is the safest long term. Nuclear is consistent, gives good baseload power, just good, high-paying jobs that allow secondary things to happen in the community, better schools, better police and fire. You get to have more restaurants pop up because people have money to spend. You may have a local community theater because people can afford to invest their time and later their money as being involved with things like that. Uh, you can have a successful, thriving local community when there's a nuclear plant there. That's been shown repeatedly, both to the positive when they've been built and to the negative when they've been taken down. So we anyway, I'm thinking the NRC may already be moving slightly that direction. I'm hoping Marzano gets confirmed. He was confirmed in the subcommittee along party lines, but hopefully, if that comes up for a vote, hopefully it will squeeze through with or without Republican votes before January 3rd. So I think he'd be good for it, even though the breakthrough is opposed to Marzano, but I think they were the only major pro-nuclear group that opposed, and they only opposed because he hasn't proven himself. At what point do you have to prove yourself before you can do the job right? And sometimes there are some people who can step into a job cold, learn the ropes in a few weeks or months, and then be one of the best people at that job that we've ever seen. And I lean towards the latter for Marzano's nomination. Hopefully, we'll find out.
I hope so. Yeah. The speed at which we're moving on this new administration is, in fact, somewhat heartening, but also a shock compared to last time around. This is something that I think that we need to capture and sort of identify that, you know, we're moving on, to quote Al Gore, from this election, certainly, and we need to continue to move in a positive direction rather than acting irrationally as a resistance fighter might. This is America, and we need to sort of support the people doing good works in Congress now. And I think that we see a lot of people who are not in line with the incoming administration that can get good work done. That's my general political stance at this point.
Well, there were a lot of people working each of the 12 departments of U.S. government that are in there for the long term. While they may care who's president, they're going to work there regardless unless something really unusual happens. And that happened with Trump's first term. There were people that left in protest or they were told to do certain things at their job and they had mass resignations or threatened to have mass resignations. That happened in the Justice Department, I believe. But there are people that care about government, that care about other people. And we have that going for us in the government. They know their jobs are important and they want to do their jobs well. They want to serve the public well, and they want to set things up, not just for the next administration, but for their grandchildren in the future. So I think we can trust 95, 98% of those people to do the right thing. So we have that going for us, regardless of who Trump puts in at the top of each department. They don't do the jobs themselves. They've got to steer the people under them. And those people can only be steered the wrong direction so far before they will revolt. And then that person will be seen as a failure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't share that optimism as far as that goes. I think these people, I think it's probably true even under a lot of Biden appointments, I would bet. They're more concerned about taking care of their friends in business, There's a lot of regulatory capture.
At the top, that's true. In the middle and near the bottom, it's not so much. Well, near the bottom, then maybe I need to get ahead, so I'm not at the bottom of the pile when it comes time. If they start letting people go, if they decide they're going to cut 10% of the force or 15% of the people in department, people at the bottom want to get ahead first. But people towards the middle 2/3 or 3/4 of people, they're there. They want to be there for 15, 20, 30, 40 years, and then they want that government pension.
Yeah.
It's usually 20 or 30 years. They're there for the pension. They're there for the job security. And so I trust a lot of those people. People at the very top, yeah, by all means, keep an eye on them. But the people towards the middle, the people that are there and they want to work there, or maybe they want to spend 15 years in one and then they'll switch to another department and start working there for another 15 years or so before they retire. I know I've known a few people that have done that. They're there because they want to work in government. They're there because they want to get that pension, and they want to have the satisfaction of knowing that they were part of a group effort to make life better for the rest of their Americans.
Yeah, but I wonder too, though. Trump is talking about doing a purge. He wants loyalists. So, but I tell you the truth, I don't. If Trump gets away with doing what he wants to do, he will crash the economy deeply. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I think that the business community realizes that. I think they're going to put a lot of restraints on him. For that reason, they don't want to see the
How,
economy crash.
how many successful businessmen do we have? And Musk is a bit of a fluke as a success, which is amazing, but I suppose good for him and on some level. But we mentioned Chris Wright. We have Borgum of North Dakota coming in. He was a businessman, sold his business, built a business, then sold it for a huge profit. Ramaswamy also built a business up from nothing. These are guys who understand the nuances of GDP. And I think they will they may not put the brakes directly on Trump. I think they will speak up and have Trump's ear if they see something that's going to wreck the economy. Because Trump wants to go down as the guy who gave wealth to every American,
I mean,
regardless if people believe that.
his
But yeah.
basic program it would crash the economy, though. I mean, the tariffs that he's talking about will cause a lot of inflation, and especially getting rid of all the immigrants. That is like the worst freaking idea ever.
But
I mean, he'll lose the red state if he actually did that. The red states would stop voting Republican because the agricultural industry would be, oh my God, what a disaster it would be for them.
Mhm.
but Gabe, you forgot. All
Yeah.
of that was a joke. It was all a joke.
Yeah, it is. It's like build a wall. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same bullshit. It's the same
Oh, the
It's
bullshit.
wall
not going to
wasn't a
happen.
joke.
You go
Well,
ahead, William. Yeah,
yeah.
William wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
the wall was not a joke. I mean, he actually did start to build the thing. Not that a wall has ever actually stopped anything.
Mhm.
Numerous historical examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. This whole anti-immigrant thing. Where does it stop? Because in the end, basically everybody who's here, with the aside from the First Nations, are all immigrants. Are they? What kind of a test are they going to put forth to to basically to stop it? I mean, I know this that we're kind of, this is kind of segueing into a non-nuclear related topic, but
Yeah.
it has much broader implications.
I think there is a lot to it, and I want to roll with this, William, and see what you think about. Is it possible that the like Nixon going to China, we get a Republican or even a MAGA solution to immigration, which is tinged with their philosophy on what it is to be an American. And that is, yes, we need your labor. We need you as people, as humans, to serve us, as crass as that might sound. And you have a way of earning your right to be here. And so this is in the form of some work visa, some extended work visa, something that codifies the labor rights that these people don't have, unfortunately. And I see that as the most likely reality, the most likely outcome.
Yeah. Have you guys ever heard the Braceros program? You guys ever heard that? That was a
Nope.
program. And it was actually a good program, but it was badly run. It was an agreement between Mexico and the United States. I mean, the farm workers used to come across the border legally. They used to do their farm thing, during the season when it needed to get picked and it needed to get planted. And then they would go back to Mexico and take the money, and they would be with their families in Mexico, and they do it again the next year. And the program stopped because it was exploitive the way it was done. I mean, there's no minimum wage for agriculture. I don't know if it's true, but it's been that way still might be that way, for agricultural workers. And well, with illegals, it's definitely true. Uh, but that was what did it in. But otherwise it was a good program. If they brought it back and it gave agriculture workers the same rights that other workers in the United States have, that would be a solution as far as the immigration problem goes.
I can only see
Right.
something like that happening under a Democrat administration, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
forget it. That he's certifiably nuts as far as I'm concerned.
I'm
mean,
going to go out on a limb here
yeah.
because the way this administration is talking about it, literally, and you're mentioning, Gabriel, of the fact that there's no minimum wage for agricultural migrant workers. Okay, I mean, it literally takes me back to Civil War era history. Okay, or pre-Civil War era history. Okay, and it goes back to the entire whole thing of MAGA, Make America Great Again. At what point in history are they talking about when America was great that they want to return to?
I
Okay.
agree.
I mean, they seem to be traveling a route of undoing most of the civil rights progress of the last 100 years in the order of the most recently achieved. Okay, for Trump's first term, they went after Roe v. Wade first, and they're basically continuing with that along the lines of going against women's and other fringe minority group rights. Okay, but what's their next target? I can honestly say that my greatest fear is that they go after the Civil Rights Act.
That's
Yeah.
rolling back.
I agree.
Rolling back rights for existing Americans would be a significant challenge to what some people are saying is the new base of the Republican Party. And the idea, and if you did bury your head in the data, in like what the talking heads were saying and the post-game analysis, we saw a number of minority constituents shift to the right. And if we see the new administration roll back rights that constituency already had, that is going to be a very large upset and a knife in the back to anyone who voted for for Trump?
Well, let's face it. Ever since this election took place, like I said, we're going into a broader election analysis, post game analysis here. But I've been basically of the opinion of since election night that Trump did not win. The Democrats handed it to him on a platter. Mainly because the entire swaths of the Democrat electorate were outright sidelined, gaslit, or ignored, and just the Arab American vote alone would have made up the difference between made up the spread between Trump's votes, which did not change from 2020, and what Harris got. They were completely silent. They were completely gaslit and ignored, and that's almost their entire adult population is roughly what the spread was.
Yeah, that did him in. I think too. It's the young people too. They lost, not just the Arab population. Off of.
I'm only singling out the Arab population for one particular reason, and I'm sure everyone who's here is aware. But they weren't the only ones.
That's my point.
They were not alone by any sense. And because of that, because of the way that the DNC handled this election, close to 20 million voters either did not show up or chose to vote against the Democrats.
Yeah. And a lot of that was protest votes for Trump.
What I find funny about that statistic is if that's what Trump had been pushing over the previous 8 or 10 years. Suppress voters because Republicans are more likely to vote in spite of what we tell them to do. And the Democrats are more likely to stay home if we tell them to stay home. Or if we try to intimidate them, Democrats are more likely to stay home. And I didn't hear that as much over the past year and a half. But yet that's apparently what happened.
Bernie was right. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
And I will never agree with Bernie on a whole host of topics. But on this one, he was dead on. The Democrats shot themselves in the foot.
And they shot their Democrats lying next to them in the foot. Almost. Is that bad? Pulled a Barney Fife, so to speak. One thing I will mention, if I can roll back thing, is about 4 or 5 minutes here. Trump going off on so many topics. I think that's part of his negotiation. I think this is something that was talked about like 5, 6, 7 years ago. He goes in there, says the most outrageous thing, and that's his opening part of a negotiation. That's how he does business. And so now, if he doesn't like a deal, he'll walk in and say, I don't like it, get rid of it, I want nothing to do it. Then he'll walk out. And people have thought a merger was about to happen will come running after him. Please come back. What can we do to make this better for you? And they'll give away 3 times as much in his favor just to get him back to the table. I think that's part of his thing. Build the wall, mass deportation of immigrants. Maybe he doesn't expect that. Maybe he just expects a 10 or 15% change in immigration numbers, both to the better and as well as getting rid of illegals. Mm-hmm. And maybe he would actually be happy with that, but he won't say that publicly.
Right.
All these other things he says, it's his opening salvo. I'm going to destroy the world if I don't get the United States the way I want the United States. I'll take the whole world down with me.
Right.
Well, what are people going to do to come back and placate him? And then he'll claim that he's the most wonderful leader in the history of this human civilization.
Yeah. And we see that. We see the hammer of folks like RFK Jr. We saw Matt Gaetz. We see all of these awful appointees that are either a distraction or a bluff. And we have
I think Gates was a red herring.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of the others are yet.
What's that?
I don't know if any others like Ramaswamy and RFK Jr. I don't know if those are also red herrings to try to test the waters, so to speak.
Right.
Well, remember, he's also kind of holding Musk and Ramaswamy at arm's length because this whole Department of Government Efficiency thing is actually not going to be an official arm. They're basically just going to have a hotline to him, right? So
Yeah,
it's his way of kind of giving him a little bit of a stiff arm, but also being
I've
able
got
to say, yeah, you have a voice here.
I've got a thought on that, and this is something which I sent in to my two U.S. senators. I gave in, said, hey, there's two people I'm in favor of seeing or three people I'm in favor of seeing nominated. Marzano and Chris Wright among them. But then I also gave him three people. And I specifically said in my letter, my email to my senators, these are things that I've been aware of for more than a year. This is not based on the current, maelstrom of the news cycle. People I was for and against, but I also said, hey, technically Trump is coming into a lame duck term at some point. It wouldn't hurt to remind him on a few of these nominations that he's coming into a lame duck session as president. Whether or not that won't kicks in 2 years or kicks in a couple of months, I don't know. But at some point, he's going to be a lame duck. Now, will he still have a chokehold on the Republican Party? That's a secondary issue.
He does
I'm
have
not sure where to go with that.
He does have an issue with this under a number of scenarios because he's going to run into a situation where there's a lot of people in the GOP right now who are basically competing to be the next him, and I don't think that this term is going to see the GOP being as united as everyone is fearing that they're going to be. Because
they weren't the last time.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Do we think someone else could come in and take up Trump's mantle of being the next great leader?
I hope not.
Well, the question is, who does Peter Thiel like? That seems to be because we look at where the money is. Look at where the influence of that money is, and it was on JD Vance. Is that sort of the future, and is the money behind Vance going to continue to push for him, or will it shift? Those are some of the questions that we need to look at and to see where this machine, this rampaging elephant, is taking us. And then maybe, for all the people who want to do good within the system, keep your heads down, do good things, and ride out the next 4 years.
Gonna be a crazy 4 years.
Yeah. Well, we will absolutely go. Sorry, go ahead, Will.
Look who's in chat. Alfred just logged in.
Oh, okay.
Oh wow!
Wonderful.
Okay.
Long time, Alfred. Yeah. I just want to throw out to anyone who sees this before mid-December on YouTube, possibly. Write your senators. Let them know your thoughts on maybe not every nominee, but the ones where you feel you have some inside knowledge, things that you've known deeply about them. Like I knew Matt Gaetz, his first term in office, he didn't show up to Congress. He didn't vote. He was just there to go to the DC watering holes, introduce himself as a congressman, and see who took interest in him. It wasn't until he was running against someone in his home district in Florida, he started showing up in Congress and voting and doing his job. But he didn't show up initially. He didn't get elected to do a job initially, which is part of the reason why I didn't like him being nominated. I'm glad he's probably out of Congress now. hopefully permanently, and hopefully he disappears somewhere that no one hears from him directly again. But he was there to be a fraternity boy in DC, basically, and there's things like that. But yeah, contact your congressperson, contact your senators, let them know your opinion. It'd be great if there was a flurry of a couple hundred emails or phone calls into congressional offices after this broadcast, or several thousand from other sources as well. Please contact your people if you're a U.S. citizen, and let them know that, remind them you are their constituent and you have concerns, and those concerns are always valid, regardless if it's a person you voted for or not.
Yeah, Alfred, I gotta apologize. Just noticed we changed our time to 1, and I did not include that when I invited you. You know, but welcome, man.
Oh,
One Eastern.
it's a fluke that I was available anyway. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, all right, all right. Well, we're talking about the Trump and energy and all of that. You got any thoughts, Alfred?
No, I try to have as few thoughts about Trump as possible. I think that's just healthier.
Mental health wise.
That is a good way to survive, but we appreciate whatever you've got for us.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine Trump having a attention span and long enough to have a nuclear policy. And I mean, even if he did, like, it's still going to be a rounding error compared to the damage the nuclear industry does to itself.
But what do you mean by that?
I just don't think 60 years of history has changed. It's the nuclear industry is its own worst enemy. If Trump does something good or bad, I think the nuclear industry will find a way to make it bad or worse, respectively.
Mm. Well, he might deregulate the NRC. That's
That
really.
would that would be one of the worst possible outcomes. Um, we often demonize the NRC, and for good reason, but we get over obsessed with the NRC because it's the only government acronym we ever see, and it's become kind of a demon in a lot of people's minds. But you got to step back and see the big picture. Is uh, uh, when the Atomic Energy Commission was split, one of the few good things they did was they explicitly gave all power to regulate nuclear to the NRC. Nobody else can play in that space, not even the states. They took away the co-sovereignty. Everything's gone. It's just the NRC. And yes, the NRC has been very punitive, but it's only been the NRC. If you take away the NRC, every single government acronym can then has veto power over nuclear technology. And you're going to have 50 states saying no. You're going to have a bunch of state agencies saying no. You're going to have a bunch of federal agencies throwing their weight around just because they can. Of particular note is the EPA. The EPA has repeatedly protested the NRC's bureaucratic monopoly. They are triple down on the linear no threshold, and they want to go hard against nuclear plants, and they're frustrated that they can't. So yeah, taking away that NRC roadblock is a massive own goal.
That's something I hadn't considered before, Alfred. Thank you for that, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, very good. So we never even came close to that perspective. And I think there is some validity there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we miss your good insights, Alfred.
Much as we fight.
We can all, because we're all fighting in the same direction now, right? So we can.
Well, from your perspective, yes.
That's right.
Yeah, but like I don't know what make you think that it would go that far. I mean, my perception would be that you just like, there may be even bad deregulation too. I could see that, but
Well,
like,
granted, I'm outlining a worst case scenario, but like, how much worse does it need to get? Just the EPA's direct involvement is, the end of so many. It would be the end of the national labs. I mean, the EPA doesn't like the way they move canisters back and forth. I mean, just a million little things. Um, State agencies have felt embittered. I mean, there's no way to know what they're going to do, but there are so many of them, and they have felt embittered and shut out since the creation of the NRC, and even before, since the McMahon Act created the Atomic Energy Commission. The states have really wanted to regulate nuclear. So you consider, 12 states have already found backdoor ways to outlaw nuclear power. So, those states are going to double down. Other states with anti-nuclear tendencies are going to, find little ways to scupper it or tax it or, add an extra layer of regulation. It's getting rid of the NRC. You're going to go from one layer of, granted, horrible regulation to many layers of who knows what regulation.
yeah, that's if they do that. That's if they go that far.
If they go that far, yeah. But I mean, what if we go full libertarian? Then you have the other problem of, as inherently safe as nuclear power is, you let the executives that run it make decisions, they're going to find a way. Like it'll take a few years, but they're pretty talented. They will find a way to cause an American Chernobyl. And
Hmm. Yeah,
and and
yeah,
even if the worst thing they do is tip over an ice cream truck, which if you understand nuclear physics is probably the worst thing they can do, the public outcry is going to be such. Uh,
yeah. That's really
Yeah.
that is true. I was thinking that myself.
Yeah,
I was thinking to myself, they could
there
go too
definitely has
far.
to be a there definitely has to be regulation.
yeah,
And
no, yeah, I agree. There has to be regulation. There has to be a lot of regulation. Now we have 100 times too much regulation,
precisely.
but paring that regulation down to within an order of magnitude of something reasonable is a process that has to be done conscientiously.
Hmm. And over time.
Yeah, and over time and training people and um like it's the the nuclear regulatory state is really something awful. I've many times talked to nuclear engineers and they get annoyed with me when I ask them to entertain hypothetical situations. I mean, just like silly water cooler talk. I'm like, hey, what if the reactor was only 3 inches thick? What if you had this type of fuel? What if you had the moderator on the outside instead of the inside? Like just silly questions, the kind of banter that any engineer engages with. Um, and the only answer they ever give me is like, that's against regulations. It's like, no, I know it's against regulations. Just let's just have fun and chat. And if you went up to an aircraft engineer and was like, "Hey, what if I made a 747 biplane?" Obviously, that's a stupid question, but they'd have fun for 5 minutes trying to do the math on that. Okay, but a nuclear engineer, they're so beaten down with Stockholm syndrome, they can't think about anything but the regulations.
I can't disagree. I had as I came into the field at various points, I have run into, these, and it's not always creative thinking. It's not always me trying to be creative, but like to say, well, we don't do this. Okay, and it makes sense that we don't do something like have a 5 inch thick reactor wall. But why is the question. And and I would hope that we are more enabled to tackle things like to tackle hard problems. But yeah, it will take a very large culture shift.
Indeed, indeed, and it can't. The linear no threshold is a self-protecting delusion because it no ethics committee is going to approve research to refute the linear no threshold hypothesis because of the linear no threshold hypothesis. So it's a scientific no-go.
Hmm. Unfortunately, bureaucracy is not a science.
Yeah,
Well,
it serves to stifle innovation. I mean, you've got the regulatory side, which the engineers that you refer to, Alfred, basically that I mean, this is kind of a broad brushstroke, but basically, let's divide the engineering and science into two separate camps: the R&D side and the operational side. So much of the regulation covering the operational side, which would be the guys that you were talking to, all right, it stifles their ability to think creatively or outside the box. And it's trying, and to a very large degree, it tries to do the same to the R&D side to basically stop people from thinking outside of a box to try to improve anything.
yeah, that's it's most obvious with well, it's not even obvious, it's explicit with liquid cooled reactors because you can't get a license to do liquid cooled liquid fuel. The cooling's relevant, but you can't get a license to do liquid fueled reactors because we don't have experience with liquid fueled reactors.
Well, I
And
think we go ahead.
I'm not even a fan of liquid fueled reactors. I want everything to be pursued.
Mhm. Right.
Seriously, let them all fight.
Right. Right. We need the best technology. We need all technologies. And I will disclaim that, well, there are liquid fueled reactor projects out there that my employer is connected with, not well publicized, and so I can't comment too much on it. But in general, yes, we want the best technologies to come out. So we're about 1 hour in, so that should be enough content if we care to cut this down. Thank you, everyone, for your contributions. Do we have any other final closing thoughts? I'll let you go first, Alfred. You came in right at the end there.
Well, I don't have anything to dovetail off of. I just ran my mouth like an asshole.
Hey, it works.
Yeah, but you
That's
are a
why we
well
like
wiped
you.
asshole. You're well wiped.
You can be a
That's certainly
disliked.
not true.
You can
That's
absolutely
certainly
be
not
a
true.
disliked asshole in the nuclear community. So.
Oh, that's definitely true.
There's a few of them around, I tell you. More than a few.
No, there's already a couple people that walk around me, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And you're not on my list in that there, just to let you know.
I mean, as far as Trump goes, maybe he does something bad. Maybe he provides some tacit help to nuclear. Um, I think it's all going to average out. What I always say about everything is, remember, nuclear is the only option. Physics is very clear. We're not arguing about if we win. We're arguing about when and how. Um, so, whatever Trump does, uh, it's important not to get caught up in the usual party politics. Everyone likes to say Republicans are for nuclear, Democrats are against. That's not true.
Mm-hmm.
It's Republicans are indifferent, different Democrats are annoying. Neither side has strong opinions. Um, Between the push from industry and the international push and the failures of renewable energy, I think it's more likely he'll not Trump, but like the Trump 4 years is ever so slightly more likely to help nuclear than hurt it. But overall, I think it's going to be erratic and nothing.
That much is guaranteed. It's going to be erratic as hell.
Yes, erratic. Everything with Trump is going to be erratic.
Mm.
Sorry for getting political there.
I'll just throw on that there's always knock-on effects, secondary effects. Sometimes a upfront negative can have long-term consequences where it sets up a positive that lasts for decades later.
Yeah, that's true.
Or
You
vice
can't.
versa.
Indeed, vice versa.
So let's look for those knock-on effects and try to maximize their positive movement, whether it's towards the nuclear industry energy in general, or people's lives and their ability to just live peaceably in the neighborhood, send the kids and grandkids to a good school, and encourage them to watch a quality documentary maybe once a month rather than playing video games constantly. Not that all video games are harmful,
You,
but
you mentioned knock-on effects, and because I can't help getting in three last words.
okay,
I'm much more
knock knock
worried
joke.
about. I'm actually more worried about Trump's renewable policy than his nuclear policy, because if he's made a lot of promises. I'm in a lot of anti-wind groups, anti-solar groups, and I just lurk in there. I have nothing to do with these people, obviously, but they're overwhelmingly pro-Trump, and he's made a lot of promises, and of course he's lying to them just like he's lying to everyone. Um, but but maybe he goes through with some of them, and the renewable energy people are going to see that as persecution, and they love being persecuted, and it means they're going to come back harder and stronger, and they're going to paint nuclear with Trump's brush in the public eye. And that's very worrisome. And if he does something drastic, like shut down the National Renewable Energy Lab, that means the next administration there's going to be a public outcry to even the score and shut down Idaho National Laboratory or something ridiculous.
I don't think that's gonna. The Democrats have become pro-nuclear as well. I think another thing too that we didn't mention is that renewable subsidies look like they're going to be thrown into the junk heap, which would give nuclear a more even playing field and renewables that have a chance now to actually prove that they're profitable and superior economically without
Which, of
those
course, they're
subsidies.
not.
Yeah, without those subsidies. So that might prove to be interesting.
I would much prefer to see nuclear get a boost than to put renewables down. That's sort of been my long-term position, is that these need to live on an even playing field against fossil fuels and not in base level competition with it. But that looks to be what we're going to get. Well, if that is it for everyone, I want to remind everyone we usually don't talk politics. We usually don't focus intently, but this is our special venting / ideation session. We're thinking about what is going to happen, what the next 4 years are going to look like, and how to make progress. We need to make climate progress, we need to organize, and we need to see through the changes in this new administration. So remember, emissions first, peace and justice will follow.